They stormed into the hospital like they owned it, two uniformed officers, radios crackling, boots echoing on the polished floor. Their eyes locked on a tall black man in a white coat holding a patient's chart. "Hey, you don't belong here!" One of them barked, already reaching for his cuffs. The nurses gasped. Patients whispered. And in that instant, the man's dignity was stripped away in front of the very people he had sworn to heal. His name? Dr. Marcus Reed, the chief surgeon of the hospital. But none of that mattered to the cops, at least not yet. They shoved him against the wall, accusing him of impersonating a doctor, trespassing, even endangering lives. The man who had spent years saving lives was now being treated like a criminal, right in his own hospital. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Not yet. Dr. Marcus Reed had built his life around one thing: service. Born in Atlanta, he grew up in a neighborhood where violence and poverty stole too many young lives. His mother worked double shifts as a nurse, and Marcus often tagged along, watching her care for patients with nothing but compassion. Inspired by her, Marcus worked harder than anyone imagined. Through scholarships, sleepless nights, and endless rejection, he fought his way into medical school. He graduated at the top of his class, determined to make his mark not just as a doctor, but as a healer. Now, years later, he was chief of surgery at St. Joseph's Medical Center, a position few achieved, and even fewer black men were granted in the South. His colleagues respected him. His patients adored him. But outside those walls, Marcus knew the world still saw him as just another black man. On this day, he was in the middle of checking charts when chaos erupted. Two police officers stormed through the ER, demanding to know who was posing as a doctor. Someone, it seemed, had called 911 claiming a man in a white coat was a fraud. That's when Marcus's world turned upside down. "Hands where I can see them," the first officer shouted. "Officer, please, I think there's some misunderstanding," Marcus said calmly, keeping his voice steady even as fear gripped his chest. But they didn't listen. One officer grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. The other pulled out cuffs. "Impersonating a doctor is a felony," the officer sneered. "You're coming with us," the nurses protested. "He is a doctor. That's Dr. Reed. He saved my cousin's life last week," one cried. But the cops didn't care. To them, Marcus was guilty the moment they laid eyes on him. Patients stared in shock as their trusted surgeon was dragged like a criminal. Marcus's mind raced. This wasn't just about him. It was about every patient waiting on him, every life depending on his skill. And now, because of prejudice, those lives were at risk. "Sir, you're making a mistake," Marcus said, his voice breaking. The officer pushed him harder. "Save it for the judge." Marcus felt humiliation burn through him. Years of education, service, sacrifice, and it meant nothing to them. Nothing at all. But the truth was about to surface. And when it did, the world would know who he really was. Just as the officers began leading him out, a voice thundered across the room. "Unhand that man immediately." Everyone froze. The hospital director, an older white man in a suit, stormed forward, fury in his eyes. "That is Dr. Marcus Reed, our chief of surgery. He runs this hospital's operating room." The officers stopped cold. Their faces went pale. What did you say?" one stammered. "I said you're manhandling one of the most respected surgeons in this entire state," the director snapped. "Do you have any idea how many lives he has saved? Including the mayor's son last year?" Gasps filled the hallway. The nurses stood taller. The patients clapped. Marcus, still in cuffs, lifted his head high. The officers fumbled, quickly unlocking the cuffs, their arrogance melting into shame. "Dr. Reed, we didn't know." "You didn't care to know," Marcus interrupted, his voice firm, dignified. "You judged me by my skin before you saw my name, and that nearly cost lives today." The silence that followed was deafening. For once, it was the officers who stood accused. The story didn't end there. The hospital demanded a public apology. The police chief himself visited Dr. Reed, shaking his hand with trembling guilt. News outlets picked up the story, sparking outrage across the city. But Marcus didn't ask for revenge. He asked for change. Standing before cameras, he said, "I don't want another young black man, doctor or not, to be treated like I was today. We can do better. We must do better." His words echoed far beyond the hospital walls. Across the nation, people shared his story, calling him not just a surgeon, but a fighter for dignity. Inside the hospital, nothing changed Marcus's routine. The next morning, he was back in his white coat, saving lives as if nothing had happened. But the respect in people's eyes was different now, stronger, deeper. And as for the officers, they learned a lesson they would never forget. Never judge a man by his skin or by the assumptions in your mind. Because sometimes, the man you call a trespasser is the one holding the power to save your life. What would you do if this happened to you?